So again, this is the 2025 LISA 2020 Symposium, and we are, not coincidentally, we are starting the plenary sessions of the symposium on World Statistics Day. So every 5 years, the United Nations designates one day to be World Statistics Day, and that is the 20th of October. And so this is the fourth World Statistics Day. 5 years ago, we also had this online symposium, and during the third World Statistics Day, and if you can do your math, the next World Statistics Day, the fifth World Statistics Day, will be on October 20th, 2030. So this is a one day in 5 years to celebrate everything that statistics can do for the improvement and betterment of society. So I'm talking to you today from the University of Colorado Boulder, and it's a lovely fall day in the United States, in Colorado. This is where LISA at Colorado Boulder is located. So LISA is the Laboratory for Interdisciplinary Statistical Analysis. And it's a stat lab where we train students to collaborate, and we then work with researchers across campus and in the city of Boulder to make data-driven decisions, to accelerate their research. And we're just one stat lab. And the LISA 2020 network is a collection of 37 stat labs in developing countries. So it's giving you an overview. And there are many co-hosts on this, on this talk. And so co-hosts have the permission to mute somebody who's accidentally has their mic open. Okay, just giving you a little brief schedule. Today is my welcome address. And then we have two plenary invited talks from Professor Ali Hadi and Professor Ahmed Elregal. Tomorrow will be our third out of 7 tutorials. So we have tutorials tomorrow, Tuesday, and also on Thursday, and then again next week on Tuesday and Thursday. Actually, we have 6 total tutorials. We had 2 wonderful tutorials last week. Then Wednesday and Friday are the final 2 days of the plenary symposium. And we're going to have a keynote address from Professor David Banks and another plenary invited talk from Professor Carla Vivacqua. And then we're going to start our parallel contributed talks. So we will have 3 sessions, and we're going to do those in breakout rooms on Zoom. And so you'll be provided a list of what the talks are and which breakout room, and so then you can join the session that you want to join. And then we'll be doing a similar thing on Friday, the 24th of October. We'll start off with a plenary invited talk by Dr. David Stern, and then we're going to have a panel discussion. And then finally, we're going to have our 3 more sessions of parallel. I think there are more than 3 sessions, but there will be parallel contributed talks again on Friday. So thank you all for joining our symposium. There are really 2 main outcomes, desired outcomes for the symposium. The first is to introduce the LISA 2020 Global Network to a wider audience. So I see that many of you, may be new to the LISA 2020 Global Network. So welcome. Thank you for tuning in and being curious about what we do. And the second desired outcome then is to introduce new ideas and energy into the LISA 2020 Global Network. And so, having so many newcomers will definitely bring in new ideas and energy. And the main idea for the for the symposium this year is statisticians in the age of AI. So, one of the topics is how can statisticians use generative AI to do better work, to have more impact, and what is the evolving role of statistics within AI? There are many people who have said many things about this, and we'll be contributing a little bit to that discussion during the next several days. For this talk, I'm trying to just give a brief overview. What is the LISA 2020 Global Network? What distinguishes this network? And then I'm going to give a little bit of a history of how the LISA 2020 Global Network came to be, and then where we want to go. And we will need to decide as a whole network, how we're going to get there. We've already set out some of these ideas in the past, and I'll remind everybody, and we will decide, in future meetings or in the panel discussion and other conversations about how the network will get to where we want to go. So LISA 2020 Global Network is a network of 37 stat labs in 11 developing countries, plus LISA at University of Colorado Boulder. We have many stat labs in Africa, and then some in Brazil, India, and Pakistan, and especially a special cluster and strength of stat labs in Nigeria. So these 37 stat labs comprise the LISA 2020 Global Network. And what does a stat lab do? What is a stat lab? Right? Well, a stat lab is a statistical collaboration and consulting laboratory or center. It's very much like a consulting center, but a stat lab really focuses on three things. The first is to build statistics and data science collaboration capacity. And by that, what we really mean is training students to become effective interdisciplinary collaborators. Also training staff, training faculty members, et cetera, that are already in statistics to become effective interdisciplinary collaborators. And with that collaboration capacity, we do the second thing, which is we focus on transforming evidence into action for the betterment of society. And we do this by collaborating with local domain experts. So local domain experts, maybe they're scientists or policymakers, maybe they are businesses, they know what they want to do, what kind of impact they want to have. And often what's holding them back is a lack of statistics and data science capability. And so they come into the stat lab and we provide that statistics and data science expertise. And then we collaborate with them to be able to transform evidence into action, action for development, action for improving society. And then a third thing that many stat labs are doing very well is improving statistical and data science skills and literacy widely by teaching short courses and offering workshops. And so, statistical literacy, data literacy is very important, and stat labs have an important role to play in improving statistical literacy widely. As a network, we have had many impacts far and wide. So we've had 37 labs in the global network who have trained almost 5,000 students. They've worked on nearly 3,000 projects and have conducted many workshops, seminars for tens of thousands of attendees around the world. At least 345 peer-reviewed publications have come out of these collaborations. And 3 books. So we have in 2022 and 24, and then now in 25, published books about that are collections of work from the LISA 2020 Global Network. So the first one, Promoting Statistical Practice and Collaboration in Developing Countries, is a lot about the creation of the LISA 2020 Global Network and what we stand for, how we stand for collaboration, how we really try to mentor other labs, and how we really want to transform evidence into action. And then we have the second book about sustainable statistical and data science methods and practices. The idea being that we can learn from each other's projects. And so in this book, we have many descriptions about statistical analyses, data science projects that we've done to solve real problems. And then there's code available so that these can be reproduced, and the next statistician doesn't have to start from scratch to do that. And similarly, practical statistical learning and data science methods. These are more case studies from the LISA 2020 Global Network of how we have used statistics and data science to transform evidence into action. Now, this is the fifth, right now is the fifth LISA 2020 Symposium. So the first one was associated with the World Statistics Congress in Marrakesh, Morocco in 2017. And then the second one, also associated with the World Statistics Congress, the International Statistical Institute's World Statistics Congress, was in Malaysia in 2019. And then because of COVID, we had our 5 years ago today, we had our third symposium on the third World Statistics Day. This was an online event. And then 3 years ago, we were able to join in person. We had 90 participants from 10 countries at KNUST in Kumasi, Ghana, for our sustainability symposium, the fourth symposium. And today really kicks off the fifth LISA Global Symposium. Statisticians in the Age of AI is the overall theme. So let me maybe talk a little bit about what distinguishes the LISA 2020 Global Network and kind of the philosophy, some of the philosophy behind it. And so we start off with a statistician. So this would be maybe a faculty member, a professor who is technically trained in statistics. They understand the methods, the theory and methods. And when if they desire to have more impact by collaborating with domain experts, well, they really need to transform themselves from a statistician into a collaborative statistician, a collaborative data scientist. And the way that a statistician can go from being a somebody who with good technical skills into somebody who can have more impact on real projects and transforming evidence into action is through education, training, mentoring, and support. And so we have developed materials for learning collaboration, for teaching collaboration. But now a collaborative statistician can do many things. So what again is a collaborative statistician? It really is the blend of technical skills and collaboration skills. And so I think in universities, most universities do a good job of teaching technical skills. But in the LISA 2020 network, we realize that that's not enough. And so we also focus on collaboration skills. And our focus is on collaboration over consultation. And one way to think about that is that in consulting, maybe you're thinking about how to answer a statistics question, Whereas in collaboration, you're really trying to help answer the research question. And so you become more of a team member. You have to develop a stronger relationship with a domain expert. And you really try to focus not just on the statistics, but how do we transform the evidence into action, right? Into action for development, into action for the betterment of society. So a collaborative statistician can do many things. They can enable and accelerate research. They can work on lots of different research projects because nearly every research project has data involved and could therefore benefit from expertise from a statistician or data scientist. They also can work in supporting local non-governmental organizations. They can help governments make better decisions. And of course, they can help businesses and industry make data-driven decisions to become more efficient, more profitable, create more jobs, have a better, more positive impact on society. Now, how does a statistician become this collaborative statistician who's able to work with lots of different people on lots of different projects? Well, we have developed the ASKER framework to improve collaboration skills so that an individual can really maximize their personal impact as a statistician. And I'm going to go through the ASKER framework because I think it's quite central to what it means to be a collaborative statistician, which is really the core of the LISA 2020 Global Network. So there are publications about ASKER, and we've talked about the ASKER framework at other venues at other times, but I will briefly go over the ASKER framework today. So, I believe that there are five principal components of collaboration, and that is having attitudes, being aware of attitudes that are beneficial for collaboration and which attitudes might detract, being able to structure meetings well, meetings with policymakers, meetings with domain experts, et cetera, navigating the content, so the qualitative and quantitative aspects of a statistical collaboration project, communicating effectively, and then creating strong relationships with domain experts. So this framework really helps produce effective collaborations by reminding us what to focus on. And by breaking it up into these five components, we can improve our skills in the individual components and then bring them together when we are actually meeting with real domain experts. This paper was published 6 years ago, and it was the 2020 winner of the American Statistical Association's Jackie Dietz Award for the best paper of the year in the Journal of Statistics Education. And it's open access, freely available for anybody. So briefly, the collaborative attitude really sets the foundation for effective collaboration. And there are many, many attitudes that one could have. And so I think really the first step is to be aware of your attitudes and to figure out which ones are actually helpful and which ones are detrimental, which ones do not help you create a strong relationship. One of the most important attitudes is that collaboration can be learned. So statisticians can learn to be collaborative statisticians. The next component is structure. And what we use is Doug Zahn's power structure. In our first book, we have a special chapter from Doug Zahn about his power process, where in each meeting, we prepare for it. That's the P. And then we open up the meeting. There are certain things to do there. then we transition into working, to actually trying to accomplish the tasks, trying to do what the domain expert would like us to do, figure out what that is. Then we end it by summarizing what was decided, what the next steps are. And because we have many meetings, and hopefully this will not be the final meeting of a collaboration with a domain expert, it's really important to reflect, to see what could we do better. And so, sometimes I reflect with the domain expert to say, this is our first meeting and we're going to have several more. What do you think went well? What do you think could be improved so that our future meetings can be even more productive? So learning and practicing the power structure can really enable effective collaborations. The content or workflow of a collaboration, there's a new publication about the Q1, Q2, Q3 workflow in the Journal of Statistics and Data Science Education. It's published online. It's not yet part of a journal because it was just recently published. But that paper that we wrote really outlines how every project has three components. The first component is qualitative, right? So even if we are statisticians, the first component of every project is qualitative. It's like, what is the research question? What is the context? How are the data collected? These are things we as statisticians need to know before we start doing the second part, which would then be quantitative. So we can use our statistical models, analyze the data. And then we're not done just by producing some figures, some tables, some numbers, some p-values. We need to translate that into what is our recommendation for this decision? What do these results actually mean? How can we actually implement this? And even going beyond that, how can we now transform this evidence into action for development or action for the betterment of society? So this Q1, Q2, Q3 workflow is applicable in every single project. And having, this is something that statisticians can do right now much better than AI, is understanding this Q1 qualitative aspect, right? So by asking the questions, by really learning about the context of the project from the domain expert, we can be sure that we're doing the right quantitative Q2 methods, and we can then interpret the results appropriately. So there's also a paper that outlines all of this. The fourth component of effective collaboration is communication. So we have developed a triangle of communication of asking great questions, listening, paraphrasing, summarizing, and then explaining statistics using what we call as the ADEPT method. So effective communication is how we make deep contributions, and it's also how we can create strong relationships. And so those two things, I think, should be the two goals of every collaboration: to make a deep contribution, that is to transform evidence into action, for the betterment of society, and also to create a strong relationship with the domain expert. And just a little bit more detail, that effective communication can create shared understanding. And one way to do that is by asking great questions. A great question does those two things. It provides the information that you need to make a contribution, so it helps you accomplish the task, and the great question strengthens the relationship. And so I like to tell the story of myself reading to my two young children. So I read to them nearly every day. And why do I read to my children? Right now, my son Max is in kindergarten and he's actually learning to read. He's sounding out letters and not quite putting them together, but he's very close to learning to read. But he's been reading with me for 5.5 years. Um, and so wait, so why do I read to somebody who can't even read? There really are two reasons, and these are the same two reasons that why I do statistical collaborations. So the first reason is to try to accomplish the task, to help the person do something technical. So I'm helping my son improve his vocabulary, exercise his imagination. I'm helping him understand, how words are associated with ideas. And so that's like a statistician helping a researcher analyze some data, understanding how the data can answer their research questions. But now the second thing is probably more important. Why do I read to my children? It's to create a strong relationship with them. So they get to spend some time with me, I get to spend time with them, and it doesn't necessarily matter what we're doing. We are just being together and strengthening our relationship. And so I think we can also do that with our domain experts. We can work on the project, and also create strong relationships. And I think that is going to be key for transforming evidence into action for the betterment of society. Now, and then we get to the final component of the ASCR framework, which is relationships. So, strong relationships really include trust, personal rapport, feelings of reliability, competence, and mutual respect. And so there are many things that we can do to create strong relationships. And then those strong relationships will help us accomplish the task better. They also just help us have a better time in life, have more connections, and feel more fulfilled as statisticians and as people in general. Okay, so that is the overview of the ASCR framework. And it's this ASCR framework that really can help an individual statistician improve their own collaboration skills to maximize their personal impact. So the next step is that an individual collaborative statistician can do even more, have even more impact in the world by creating a stat lab to support and train others. So by creating a stat lab and having projects to work on, students can get great experience applying their classroom knowledge to solve real world problems. And this idea of using projects to build capacity is a key core idea of the LISA 2020 Global Network, and it is related to mentoring. So I try for every project that I work on to involve students, and so by involving the students and mentoring them, they develop their own statistical collaboration capacity, and they become really good really quickly. And then, we have that means that there is, a +1 collaborative statistician out there in the world who can enable and accelerate research projects or help governments make better decisions and work effectively with NGOs and business and industry. So one more aspect of the LISA 2020 network is this idea and this mindset that we really want to transform evidence into action for data-driven development. And I think that data-driven development requires 4 things. It requires domain expertise. So somebody has to know what's going on, why everything is important. And then beyond that, to make a data-driven decision, there needs to be a data producer, there needs to be a data analyzer, and then a data decision maker. And I think it's in the intersections between the data producer, which might be the National Statistics Office, or it might be the technicians in a laboratory who are actually collecting data, producing data. Um, working, so data analyzers are statisticians, are the stat lab. That is our wheelhouse. We also can help with the data production, and we also need to help through our collaboration with making data-driven decisions. But it's collaborating in the intersections of data-driven development where we have the most impact, and we can also build the most capacity. So we can help the data producers collect higher quality data, and we can help the decision makers make the best decisions, be the best data-driven decisions. So in summary, the LISA 2020 Global Network is a network of 37 stat labs, and each of these stat labs are they are run individually and they operate individually, but then they collaborate across the network. And the focus of our network really is on collaboration, mentoring, and then transforming evidence into action. Okay. Now, I'm going to go back in time just briefly, just to give a little bit of context for where we are now as a global network. The idea of LISA 2020 came in 2012 when I was at Virginia Tech in the United States. And I saw that that LISA was a great, it was a great model because our graduate students were learning a lot by collaborating on real projects. And then domain experts all around campus were really benefiting by having the statistical expertise available to them through the collaboration. And so there was a project in South Sudan to rebuild higher education and agriculture. And I had some colleagues who were on that project. And so I convinced them to try to bring in statistical collaboration into that project. And so the first place I visited internationally, with the idea of LISA 2020 was in South Sudan in 2012. The South Sudan was not even 1 year old yet. And it was a very exciting time because they were a new country and they were trying to rebuild agricultural research after decades of civil war. So I visited the University of Juba in South Sudan, and there were about 50 agricultural researchers in, soil science, agronomy, many different fields of agriculture. And the idea was that we find the statisticians. There were 3 statisticians in the statistics department in University of Juba, and we teach them how to be more collaborative and to work with the agricultural researchers. And so those 3 statisticians could then work with the 50 agricultural researchers to enable and accelerate agricultural research. And the statisticians loved the idea. And actually many of the administrators loved the idea. The agricultural faculty really liked the idea because they knew that statistics was not always a strength of their own. And so they would love to collaborate with experts in statistics. And that the registrar of the university told me a quick story, which I think is a key story because it really validated the idea of LISA 2020. So the story was that there was a graduate student in pharmacy who had been trying to solve a problem for his master's thesis for 9 months. And he couldn't solve the problem. And he had been banging his head against the wall for 9 months until he was so frustrated that he decided to leave the university And so on his way out, he stopped at the registrar's office to officially withdraw. And the registrar asked him, why are you leaving? And they found out that, or he found out that it was a statistics problem that the student could not solve, and that was frustrating him so much, causing him to drop out. And the registrar said, "Oh, I have a friend, Laura Gore, in the statistics department. Let's go talk to him." And so they did. And 45 minutes later, the problem was solved. And this then shows really the potential impact that statistics can have, but not just statistics, but really a stat lab. So if there had been a lab where that student could have gone, that student could have worked on the project problem for a week, not been able to solve it, come into the stat lab, and then have the problem solved 45 minutes later, saving 9 months of his life. So that really that this visit really energized me. Um, of course, there were setbacks. The vice chancellor of the university, at the end of the very last hour of our visit, said, "No, I don't want you to. I don't want any of the money to go to the statistics department. I want it to all stay in the agricultural college. So I want you to train, my 50 agricultural researchers to be better statisticians." And I said, "No, I want to train the 3 statisticians to collaborate with the 50 agricultural researchers." Um, and anyway, that's where the project was left. And then just a few months later, there was another outbreak of civil war, and the project got canceled. So this is like an open loop, and someday we will return to South Sudan and help them establish a stat lab. So just briefly, started in 2012. We have Tanya at the very beginning with Emmanuel, who is a master's student from Tanzania. And then we had funding in 2013 for a LISA fellow to come to LISA for a year. We had 108 applicants from 34 countries, and Professor Olawale Awe, who was still, he had not yet gotten his PhD in 2013. He became the first LISA fellow. Now he's a uh, uh, well-known professor and um, international icon in statistical collaboration. But what I find really interesting, and what I want to mention just in the few more moments that I have remaining for this talk, is that of the 108 applicants, more than a dozen of them are in the LISA 2020 network today. So many of the finalists, they were not selected to be the one, initial LISA fellow, but they have since been able to find other funding and come to LISA on a visit, or invited me for a visit, or have created their own stat lab. And so this really was a very helpful to have all of these 108 applicants really believe in the idea of LISA 2020, and then they took it upon themselves to accomplish the ideals of LISA 2020 and create their own stat lab and build up our network. In 2015, we had 5 stat labs. And then in 2016, I moved LISA from Virginia Tech to University of Colorado Boulder. And we had then 6 labs by 2017. We had new funding. We had funding from USAID. That organization has been since disbanded in the United States by the Trump administration. There are no more USAID employees. But with USAID funding, we had our second symposium in Kuala Lumpur. And by 5 years ago on World Statistics Day, we achieved our goal of having at least a network of 20 stat labs in developing countries by World Statistics Day in 2020. We actually had 28. And then we had our sustainability symposium in Ghana 3 years ago. published. We've published 3 books. Currently, we have 37 stat labs in the network. So we've grown, but in the past 5 years or so, we've been more focused not on growth, but rather on strengthening stat labs to become more sustainable. So I have about 3 more minutes, and I'm just going to talk about where we want to go. And these points are going to drive the discussion of the LISA 2020 network for the next 6 months or so, for us to decide how we're going to get there. So, we want each stat lab to be a local powerhouse that really is instrumental in the research enterprise of their university or their organization, and uses the projects that they work on to train the next generation of collaborative statisticians. And we also want to be a network that's known for mentoring, so that every lab helps mentor another lab or helps establish a new one. We have created regional networks, and so we'd like our regional networks to become more active. We have 3 regional networks in Nigeria: northern Nigeria, a southwest, and a southeast Nigeria. We also have a Ghana regional network, an East African network, and then we call it like the BRICS, so Brazil, Egypt, South Africa, Pakistan, and India network. And we want our labs to collaborate with each other across the network. We 3 years ago, we created a charter that set up this regional network system, as well as committee system, where we have 7 vice presidents that are in charge of committees. And so the committees need to really work as intended to strengthen the global network. And then, of course, we want to have signature network activities. One of those is this symposium that keeps the labs involved, connected, and energized. So we're going to have a panel discussion about this. And for all of the newcomers, I also invite you to join us at the next Zoom meeting. So we have monthly Zoom meetings. You will get a link as part of a wrap-up of the symposium, but our meetings are the first Thursday of every month at 1400 UTC. So with that, I want to thank everybody for attending, for listening, and we will have follow-up discussion on Friday for the panel discussion. But also, if you want to email me, if you have questions, you can email me. You can also find LISA 2020 on the internet. lisa2020.org is our website. So thank you.